Okay, let's begin. It's very interesting. When Rabbi Itkin asked me to speak, so I asked him which topics would you like to be discussed. One of them was Kitniyos. It's a mazel. It shows I spoke about it 2 years ago. Same Kitniyos as out of Shabbos. So it's great. It shows you that whenever you speak, Lavdafka, the people remember. So, um, okay.
Say Nishmas here.
What's the name? What's the name? Lila Nishmas. David Moshe ben Binyamin Kayan. Yeah. Okay. Lila Nishmas. David Moshe ben Binyamin Kayan. Before we start about Kitniyos, I want to speak about a very, very important kudah. One of the very important mitzvahs of Pesach is Vigadat Levin for the mitzvah of of teaching your children. There's a famous Rav, the Shabina Rav, if anybody's familiar with who he was, and the Gedele Paskim. And a year or two ago, they put out a god of his. And I happened to buy it, and I saw a wonderful thing over there. And the story goes as follows. He would get very, very upset when people would walk into his kitchen to try to sneak in to see what his chumras and hidurim on Pesach are. So the question is, why did he get upset? Let your Talmidim learn how your zehirus and different mitzvahs and different pratim in the mitzvah, the mitzvahs of Pesach, v'chulu. Why are you getting upset? The answer is very simple. The answer, when he was approached about this question, he gave an unbelievable answer, which is this is very, very important to say that we have to internalize and to give it over to our children. He said as follows. He said, every single thing that he does on Pesach, it's only what he saw by his father. Don't learn from me chumras and hidurim. I don't know. It could be there's a better way to do it. It could be there's a different way to do it. I'm not doing it because of the chumrah. I'm doing it because of when his father gave it over to him, of Yigadat Levincha, he's being mamshech in the same derech that his father taught him. So if you think about it, we're talking about here the Shabina Rav, who was nizir b'kalu k'b'chamura, and if there's any chumrah, any hiddur, he would have for sure jumped. He would be the first one to jump to take it. And nevertheless, what was his Pesach? His Pesach was the way his father taught him. So we're very, very busy giving out matzahs. We're very busy doing other mitzvahs v'chulu, but sometimes it's possible that we can forget the ikr of Vigadat Levin for your own child. So it's still Pesach. There's still time. The Sdarim are finished, but there's still time to internalize this message and to really spend time with your children, give them over the proper chinuch, what you heard. Okay, with that small agdama, we'll start now. A little bit, we'll speak about Kitniyos. So it's very interesting. We have a Mishnah in Pesach Pesachim, Daf Lamed Hey and Aleph. The Mishnah goes on to enumerate the Chameshes minhagim, Dagan, the 5 types of grain, which you're able to make matzah from it. Right? We have a special drasha that whatever is able to come chimutz, it can become chametz. That's what you're able to make matzah from. Then there's a whole deal on what's the halach when it comes to rice. The Mishnah didn't mention anything about rice. It only went through the 5 types of grain. All rice, it was not even mentioned. So the Gemara goes on to be dan about rice. It isn't Deichan. And it actually comes out that according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, rice is mamish chametz. And not only that, you're able to make matzahs out of rice, and you're able to be yotzer to fulfill the mitzvah of achilas matzah with matzahs made from rice, which would mean seemingly that kitniyos, any derivative of kitniyos, okay, maybe you can say just rice, whatever it is, but let's stick with rice. Yeah, let's stick with rice for now. Sorry. Oh, rice is. The shaila is, do we know what rice is? It comes out that, first of all, you're able to be mekayim the mitzvah of matzah with matzah made from rice. But second of all, that would also mean that it's chametz. Rice is chametz. So clearly, yeah, the halacha is not like the shitta. We don't pass it like the shitta. And the halacha actually states that no, it's only the 5 types of grain which are mentioned in the Mishnah, and rice is not considered in this prohibition. And that's it. So it comes out, if you just learn the Mishnah and the Gemara, there's no such mention of any prohibition of Kitniyos. Forget about other types of minhag, but certainly not rice, not deichan. All of these things are not included. And you would walk away that you're allowed to eat rice on Pesach. It's not a problem, right? Okay, very good. That's a correct, from the Gemara, that's a correct assessment. Then we get to the Torah. The Torah goes on to mention the 5 minim once again. And he says, however, when it comes to Kitniyos and other things, you're not able to make matzahs from it. However, comes the Torah and throws in a line. He says, Yesh eisrin lechel eres v'chol mine Kitniyos b'tafshel. Why? Lefi shemini chitim mis'avim bahen. However, the Torah finishes off b'chumre yeserehi v'loi nagu kain. He brings a shit of Yesh eisrin. There are those shittas that hold that is forbidden. You're not allowed to eat eres, and he's meisif. He adds not just the Mishnah and the Gemara are only discussing rice. When the Torah brought down this halacha, he actually was meisif. He added that it's not just rice, but it's also different types of kitniyos. Why? And he gives us a reason. There are those who answered that forbid it. Why? Because they are afraid that other actual chametz mixes in together with the kitniyos. Obviously, if you're going to cook it, it's going to come to become actual chametz, and you're going to be over an Isser Deiraisa. So the Beis Yosef quotes this Torah, and he brings a Rabbi Yerucham, a very fascinating thing that he writes. He writes that those that are neyeg, those that have the custom not to eat rice and different types of kitniyos, cooked kitniyos on Pesach, it's a minhag shtus. Ad kedei kach. We'll see. Shtus Kedusha is when it says Shtus Kedusha. Otherwise, if it doesn't say Shtus Kedusha, there's also such a thing as minhag shtus. However, he also adds, if they do it in order to be machmir upon themselves, I'm not going to call it minhag shtus, but he doesn't understand why they would go that far. So the Torah said, Einan Onegin came, this is not a minhag. Rabbi Yerucham said it's a minhag shtus. However, if they do it to be machmir upon themselves, Yisrael Kadeshim, especially when it comes to Pesach, they want to be extra zahiros, not to eat kitniyos. Fine, I'm not going to call it a minhag shtus, but I don't understand this chumrah. That's the way he puts it off. He ends off very, you'd walk away. Again, also from Rabbi Yerucham, that there's no Isra Kitniyos. But obviously, there has to be a but because we all don't eat kitniyos. There has to be other rishonim, right? So you have the smack. And then the Beis Yosef brings the shit of the smack, which is brought down from the Goyis Maimonides. And he says, actually, no, that we are machmer on kitniyos. We do not eat kitniyos. And he brings a few reasons. The first reason is kitniyos is a ma'aseh k'deira. Chametz is a ma'aseh k'deira. When you're going to cook something, the end result may look like chametz. And since doesn't say it, other Rishonim, they fill in the blanks. Today's day and age, not everyone is baki in Isser v'heter. Not everyone knows the differences between certain products, b'chulu, and how you can cook one thing and it's permitted, and another thing it's forbidden. What's going to happen? You're going to have a simpleton is going to look at the food. He's going to look, wow, on the rabbi's table, I saw something that looks mamish like chametz. And there's no problem. He's eating it. He's serving it. Right? I'll do the same thing. It's obviously it's a wheat product. So I'll do the same thing. So ultimately, what are we saying? It's a chumrah. Why? Because we're afraid people are going to learn mistakenly to actually cook actual chametz on Pesach. People are not going to know the difference. Both of them are ma'aseh k'deira, and you kind of come to make a big mistake. Now, we saw earlier the Torah quoted the reason of actual chitim on misadev, actual wheat mixes in together with the kitniyos. That's the way it historically. That's how when they would ship it, import it, it would mix a lot. So the smack brings us this reason as well, that there's actual, not only a concern of maybe somebody's going to learn out to make a mistake, but also there's a real chash, a real concern of chametz itself. So it comes out that there's a big difference between the two reasons. If you're telling me that it's a prohibition because somebody's going to come to learn, that means that ultimately there is no real chash deiraisa in this food itself. It may lead eventually to somebody transgressing the prohibition of chametz. However, this food itself, it's kosher. But if you go the second reason, there's a real chash of an isser deraisa of actual chametz mixed into your food. Okay, so that is one little difference between the two shittas.
But the food itself is still okay.
The food itself is still
You're
okay according to the first.
They did it, but it
Ooh,
would be
it's a chash.
purified.
Oh, it's a chash. Oh, very good. So the Trumas Hadashin is going to address what you're saying. So the Trumas Hadashin writes, definitely we're not going with the shit that holds it's because of minus ayin. That maybe someone's going to be cheshid you, that you're eating chametz, that's for sure we're not worried about. That's the way he starts out. However, he does bring the shit that holds it's mamish chashas of the Naisa. Maybe you have actual chametz mixed into your food. Right? So technically that's why it's also, and therefore we would still not be allowed to eat it, even if we would know for a fact, because there's a gzeira. However, he ends off that 1 second. This chash, this concern is only strong enough to forbid to aser eating it, but there is no isser of owning it. You're allowed to keep it, you're allowed to even use it. You're allowed to make shaman, you're allowed to make oil to illuminate. Today, yeah, nobody knows there's such a thing. Today we have lights, but it used to be you would, if you learn Masechta Shabbos, you would learn that you would light from oil. That's how your light would be. And there's a whole gzeira if you're allowed to read from it. Shemayata, maybe you're going to move it over. It used to be back in the day, people's source of light was from oil. They would literally light lights, and they had a wick, they placed it in oil, and that's what they used. So the Trumas Hadashin says that's not a problem for Pesach. You're allowed to use oil, which is made from Kitniyos, for your lights. The whole chashas, all of the concerns that we have is only a concern. We're going to take it only to the level of not eating it. Owning it and deriving benefit from it is not a problem. Okay? The Beis Yosef ends off, after bringing the smack and bringing the other Rishonim that give a strong reason why we're makpid not to eat kitniyos. He says, "V'leis b'chash l'divreihem l'dvarim halolu z'losei Ashkenazim."
That you're allowed to keep.
Yeah.
So the idea there is that even though there's some wheat maybe mixed in there.
No, it's maybe we don't know. We don't know. It's only the reason why we don't allow it is because maybe there's something there. But Lamaisa, we don't know. And since we don't know, we're not going to be that worried to actually answer it. Safik chashash is a deraisa potentially, but it's only chashash. Sorry, to eat it. No, that's what the Trumas Hadashin. That's what he's mechalik. He says this chashash, we're only going to take it that far not to eat it. But since ultimately it's just a chashash, we're not going to take it that far not to own it. Yes, you are allowed to own it, and we're going to see you're even allowed to use it sometimes. So the Beis Yosef ended off that leis chashav dvarim halalu is los Ashkenazim. Right, only Ashkenazim are cheshish for such a thing. He ends off that this is not something which is accepted amongst the Sfardim. The Darkei Moshe, anyone know what the Darkei Moshe was? The Ramah, right? The Darkei Moshe, he wrote a chibur, he wrote a sefer on the Torah. Then he wrote on the Shulchan Aruch the Ramah. It's two different things. And he says, "Va'anu b'nei Ashkenazim nagel hachmer." He actually says, "Okay, yeah, it's Ashkenazim." And he writes very clearly, "Us Ashkenazim, we are noig to be machmer." So he brings it from a Sadashin, he brings the Maril, not the Alter Rebbe's brother, the Maril from the Rishonim, which go on to explain what we saw really in the smack. So, how strong is this Issa? B'shas adchak, you have no other food. Are we going to be matter? Can you eat kitniyos or not? Meaning to say, the question really begins is, it's not something that we saw, it's a gzeira in the Gemara. We don't see it in the Gemara until you learn the Shuvah from the Samach Tzedek. But until you didn't see that Shuvah yet, it comes out that it's a minhag which was established from a few Rishonim, and that's about it. So fine, of course, as we're going to see that Ramah Paskins, you're not allowed to have kitniyos on Pesach. Obviously, the shaila is how much of a takeoff do we have to give to such a halacha? So there's a famous Chaye Adam. There's a joke about the Chaye Adam that he acid potatoes. So Chaye Adam means the life of a person. So the Chaye Adam took away the Chaye Adam by answering potatoes in Pesach. But But the Chai Adam writes, and the Mishnah Berurah brings him down in Sifkat and Vav and Tafin Gimel, that B'shas and Chak, you have nothing else to eat, you're allowed to eat it. You're allowed to eat Kitniyos. So there's a very geschmack of Shuvah from the Tzemach Tzedek in the Erech Chaim. Tzemach Tzedek brings this Chai Adam and he's Chaylik B'chol HaToykef, and he says, I don't know where he got it from. You see, you're able to be makel so fast, even without Hatara, without doing Hataras Nadarim, then the Tzemach Tzedek is Ma'arech, that Hataras Nadarim doesn't even help. Why? Because this is a minhag of Eseinu. This is something which was actually gives quite a few reasons. This is a minhag that was established, first of all, on the entire Kehillah. A yachid cannot be matter nether on something which is chal on an entire kehillah. You don't have such an ability. If Ashkenazim are machmer one way, hataras nadarim doesn't take away the chumras of the Ashkenazim. You can't. It doesn't work that way, right? Once you're part of a kehillah, all of those halachas apply to you equally. You can't just make hataras nadarim and get out of it. Then he says, first of all, he's on many angles. He addresses this the shaila. He says, first of all, Hatara doesn't help on a minhag which was established by somebody's parents, and then it was passed over to their children. Who said Hataras Nadarim helps? Doesn't work like that. So he goes on mamish that it has the full din, full takeoff of a regular din, and more than that, he really adds. He's medaik in the Rishonim Taisus, another Rishonim in Chamin Mesha, that really there is a smach for this gzeira in the Gemara itself. He wants to prove that really Kitniyos could come to chametz according to one Gerson taste this. It just takes a longer time, so on and so forth. Lamaisa, he ends up. There's no such thing as just making a taras and darim for Kitniyos. It's mamish a full din. If somebody doesn't have what to eat, so then he says that you can make chalita. You scorch it, whatever it is. You ultimately what it works is it's a shock in the food, so to speak. You put in an extreme. Either in extreme heat and extreme cold, depending for what type, and no change is going to affect it. So if you do that, and since it's only Kitniyos, in the end, if you have mamish, nothing else to eat, then you can be mekel. But the Yeshivas that we get from the Tzemach Tzedek is, first of all, many chidush halachas in the hataras nadarim. You can't just be mad to every single one that you want, especially minhag that was from your forefathers. And minimum kehillas v'chulu, but al kol panim we see from the Tzemach Tzedek it's a din that has a full takeoff like any other halacha, and you can't just make hataras nadarim. So in the Shulchan Aruch, the Mechamer Paskins elu dvarim sheitz b'hem yedei cheves matzah. The Mechamer brings the 5 types of grains, and it makes no mention of Kitniyos. That there's an Israel Kitniyos. He says aval loy eires v'shami ne Kitniyos v'gam ein b'hem yedei chimutz mutal lasis b'hem mehem tavsha. The Mechaber in the Shulchan Aruch, the Beis Yosef, which was Sephardi, right? So he paskins. There's absolutely no problem with eires and any other Kitniyos, and they do not call me yedei chimutz. You're allowed to make food from them on Pesach. Okay, so that's just a summary of his maskana in the Beis Yosef. Then the Ramah goes on to continue, and he says, no, yesh esrim. He brings the guy's mindness brought from the smack, and the other v'minhag b'Ashkenaz lahachmer ve'ein l'shanos. You're not allowed to change. However, we do find there's a few leniencies when it comes to Kitniyos as opposed to anything else. So the first thing is, we mentioned earlier from the Trumas Hadashin and Maril, that you're allowed to make from it oil. You're allowed to have hana from Kitniyos. There's no isra hana when it comes to Kitniyos. The only isra is eating it. You're even allowed to own it. Then the Ramah goes on to say that first of all, what would be the halacha if by accident it got mixed into your food? So you're eating kosher Pesach according to minhag Ashkenaz. All of a sudden, your best friend comes to visit you, and he has a Kitniyos with him, right? By accident, it got mixed in, right? There's a halacha, you're not allowed to eat basar v'chol of shulchan echad, right? Why? Because maybe you're going to come to eat from each other's food. So you guys are such friends, you're eating together, and he had some rice in his hand, and he wanted to give you a big hug, and a few grains of rice fell into your food. What's halacha? Does your food become ulcer now or not? Any guesses? Batal bereiv. So you don't even need shishim. I just want to remind everyone, when it comes to Pesach, when it comes to chametz, very good. There's no such thing as bittul on Pesach, right? A mashal of chametz is also. You're not allowed to have even the smallest speck of chametz at all. That's not the case when it comes to kitniyos. Not only do you not need to have 16 times against the kitniyos, but even if you have reiv, if you have majority, that's also good. The question is, why do you need just if it's bottle even what's the point of having majority against the kitniyos? Because if the majority is kitniyos, then it has a din of a tafshil shel kitniyos. It's a food of kitniyos. If you go after the majority, and if it's majority kitniyos, so the whole thing is kitniyos. So as long as you have a minority as high as you want, but as long as it's still a minority, the kitniyos is bottle. Sorry? Even according to the opinion, it's a chash chametz because it's only a chash. That's the reason why we asked for it, because it could be a chash. But we don't know for a fact that there's chametz here. So therefore, it's still bottle. Refuah, are you allowed to use kitniyos for medicine? Somebody's not feeling well, and they need to take medication, and they were told by the pharmacy that this pills are a little bit easier, but let's say this liquid antibiotics, whatever it is kitniyos. Are you allowed to take it on Pesach? So the Mishnah Berurah writes that if somebody is sick, you're allowed to eat kitniyos. It's not a problem. No one argues. We're about from the Tzemach Tzedek to be chelak on just to eat it stand if you have nothing else. But if somebody has a din of a chela, you're allowed to take it on Pesach.
Is a pregnant woman.
If the doctor tells her she needs to take her prenatals, then yes, she's allowed to. I wanted to speak about a few more things. Oh, my phone's not stopping. I want to speak about a few more things, and I guess we'll end with that. There's a very interesting chakira. How do you view kitniyos? Do you go by at the time that they made the gzeira? At the time of the Rishonim, whatever min was around at that time, only that, whatever whatever type of grain was around at that time, only that is included in the prohibition of kitniyos? Or do we say no? Anything that would fall under the category of kitniyos, the way it's described in the Rishonim, would also be prohibited. Quinoa, that's a very practical question. Yeah. First of all, it's about the so it's fine. But more than that, if the doctor feels that a person needs it, because it could have an effect for the pregnancy, for the baby. If you don't have enough, folic acid, whatever it is, it could be dangerous. It's a kshash sakana. So kshash sakana, you're allowed to take it. Filo chela she'ena sakana, you're allowed to take it. Even if it's a chela, but it doesn't have a sakana, if al pidin he has a status of a chela, you're still allowed to take it. For kitniyos, not chametz, correct. So the question is, what is included in the gzeira of kitniyos? Do you only go by the time that the gzeira was established? Or do you view, is it whatever falls into that category will also be included? So you have the Zecher Yehesef, he had a tshuva, he was being down on beans, the green beans, yeah? Anyone needs green beans? So he was makel at a time of hunger, of starvation, where they didn't have any other food. Then he was makel to be semech al to say that since it wasn't around at the time of the Rishonim, they didn't have these types of beans, then you're allowed to be makel and you're allowed to eat it. Yeah? And the Shani Tshuva, on the other hand, was actually machmer on this. But then you have, interestingly enough, anyone likes peanuts? Can you eat it on Pesach? There's a very interesting machlokes by peanuts. How do you view peanuts on Pesach? Peanuts were not around at the time of the Rishonim when this gzeira was made. The question is, are you allowed to eat on Pesach for this reason or not? So you have three, you probably have more, but you have three main shuvas which discuss it. You have the Chalkas Yaakov, the Yaakov Reish. He was a Rav in, I forgot now the country, but he has a very, very fashionable shuvas, Chalkas Yaakov. So he writes, he was actually mitzaded a little bit with this svara to say that since it wasn't around at the time of the gzeira, there should not be an issue to eat it. Lamaisa, he doesn't go with it, but he gives room for such a svara. You have the Sridei Eish as well, who's down on this. Lamaisa didn't go with it, but he did quote such a thing, such a svara. But the Igris Ramesha Feinstein actually went with the svara la'alacha lamaisa, that since peanuts were not around at the time of the Rishonim, you are actually allowed to eat them on Pesach. So peanuts it's actually a very big discussion. You do have many Gdei Yisrael who actually did eat it on Pesach. You have Rabbi Tzvi. He actually was interviewed, so he was given a guest magid shir in Time Chetmunim to be the Rosh Yeshiva. It was a famous story. And there's a young bacher, he was malab after he finished giving a shir. We know who it was. After he gave the shir, he was put on a praba. He was given as a, how do you say? He was a trial to be a Rosh Yeshiva in Time Chetmunim. So after they thanked him, they didn't take him for the job. So a bacher wanted to be malab him back to the train. And the bacher said very politely, very derech agav, he asked him a question on learning. And this big Rosh Yeshiva chapped that with this question that he asked, it destroyed the whole yesod of his pilpul that he gave in the shir. And he was forever thankful to this bacher because he could have done it berabim in front of everybody and embarrassed him. But he didn't. On the way to take him to the train, he said it very politely, and he didn't even say anything connected to the shir. He said in such a way that he would understand that it's recorded that he would give peanuts, he would mechalik peanuts by his table on Pesach. It's just that he didn't hold it as Kitniyos, but you have many who did not agree with this. So the Avnei Nezer, and Chasalazav, the Malam Lahoyel, they all passed in Lachumra, but they did not go with the svara to say that since it wasn't around at the time of the Rishonim, then it should not be included in the Gzeira. They were down for other svaras, and they did not accept this shita. How about children to eat kitniyos? And I guess we'll end off with that. There's more to speak about, but it's out of Shabbos. Are you allowed to give children kitniyos or not? So we have in two places, at least, the Rama brings that a tinek, a child, has a din of a chela she'ein b'sakana. A child has an automatic status of a chela she'ein b'sakana. The child doesn't even have to be sick. The very fact that it's a child, it gives it the status al pidin as a chela she'ein b'sakana. And since we mentioned earlier that a chela she'ein b'sakana, there's no gzeira of kitniyos, you're allowed to feed them kitniyos. So then children are allowed to eat kitniyos. Now the question is, 1 second, until what age? You're allowed to give kitniyos until they're 9 years old, they're 10 years old. How can that be? So there's a big machlokes in the age of how long does a child keep the status of a chela she'ein b'sakana? Is it up until 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old, 6, 7, 9, 11? So in the past, it ranges very, very drastically, so to speak, but from up until 5 years old, 6 years old, all the way up until even some say 11. So there's a very interesting chakir in the Achreinim that once the child reaches the age of chinuch, there's an isser called tzvi b'yadayim. You're not allowed to give an isser to the child directly. There's an isser called tzvi b'yadayim. You're not allowed to literally to give over to feed the isser to a child. Once they reach the age of chinuch, once they're able to understand that something is not permitted. So the question which is brought down in today's Achreinim is, with those that go up until the age of 11 years old, or even let's just say for argument's sake 9 years old, whatever it is, l'chayr is a problem of a tzvi b'yadayim. You can't to give a child kitniyos. He understands you're not allowed to take kitniyos, and we're discussing you have what else to eat. So is there a problem with tzvi b'yadayim, or you have a blanket heter up until 9 years old? So it's very, very interesting. Many of the Achreinim point out that even though maybe when it comes to Shabbos, we would be more lenient to treat them as a chela she'ein b'sakana, that it's somebody who's sick, but there's no danger. When it comes to over here to feeding them isser, they actually have to be sick. The very fact that they're 9 years old does not give them an easy pass, so to speak, but they actually have to be a chela she'ein b'sakana, and then you're allowed to do it. Okay. say the.
What would be the?
It depends on the fiat side of. It depends. You buy, so if it's multiple it's fine, which it is. Oh, well, so it's interesting. It's accepted in America that it's not Kitniyos. In America, in Eretz Yisrael, there are not Kitniyos.